Watch out, D.C. Here we come.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're providing wonderfully cogent, thorough, and informed summaries on the issues that we've been looking at for a couple of months. And so this is an appropriate summation of these discussions. So I thank you for that. And I'm sure some of you are writing out questions, I hope, to encourage us to go in some additional avenues. I must note, though, before we wrap up this phase of the conversation, that the world isn't the same as it was in January when we began these conversations. The Middle East is certainly not the same as it was in January. How do you view the impact of those changes on the Middle East? Let's start there, and then we'll flesh it out a bit more about what's going on and what might be happening.
Sure. Well, I'm about to convince you not to trust anything I just told you, because the events of the last 8 weeks represent a collapse of the hard drive of all of those who thought they were Middle East experts. You know, for years there was an assumption that the Middle East was a troubled region, a kind of simmering cauldron of problems, which, you know, the list goes on and on. Failure to develop economies, corrupt crony capitalism, the hotbed of terrorism, succession, legitimacy crises. But people became comfortable with this and assumed that it was simply going to go on because dictators are dictators and people are docile and they're going to live the way they live. And 8.5 or 9 weeks ago, some people in Tunisia and Egypt started proving otherwise. So all the expertise of the pundits and the experts and the former diplomats goes out the window when we're in an entirely new situation, trying to understand what's happening in this very complex region. I had the opportunity to join one of the classes here today and suggested that the best way to look at this may be the first round or the second round of a 15-round heavyweight bout in each of the countries that we're looking at. Egypt has taken a very interesting turn towards constitutionalism, which is unlike almost any other revolution in history. Whether this will continue and whether we'll see a kind of Egyptian equivalent of the Federalist Papers and you know, the Thomas Jefferson and James Madison of downtown Cairo emerging to think creatively about structures of democracy and the rights of people versus the responsibilities of people in government remains to be seen, but it's at least started out in the right direction. At the other end of the spectrum, you have the Libyas and the Syrias and the Yemens and even the Bahrains, where autocratic authoritarian governments have decided they would rather shoot their way into staying in power, including killing their own people. And one doesn't know which of those models is going to predominate. The impact that that has on our discussion on the peace process is rather profound. In the short term, even those who are skeptical about Prime Minister Netanyahu and his policy, if they were sitting in his chair right now, would be real nervous about making any kind of concessions with respect to security. Because you not only have this upheaval in places like Egypt, which has a peace treaty with Israel, the beginning of an upheaval in Jordan, which has a peace treaty, but you now have a government in Lebanon at Israel's northern border that is largely influenced by Hezbollah, a terrorist organization once called the A-team of terrorism before we knew Al-Qaeda. And Hezbollah is largely calling the shots in the Lebanese political system. And you have in Gaza a government run by Hamas that is dedicated to seeing Israel eradicated as well. So the Prime Minister of Israel is going to have to be very cautious in thinking about the kinds of risk-taking that peace process entails. And until there's more clarity with respect to the direction of change in the Middle East, one may see a tendency to hunker down and kind of, you know, keep the finger in the wind and see which way it's blowing.